I'm kicking off this week with 3 very exciting Live with Ghalia sessions. And today we're going to meet with Linda Farha to talk about Popup Go. So in this live session, we're going to understand the nature of Popup Go, the services it provides, but as usual, we're going to be concentrating a lot on the importance of pop-up stores and the pop-up retail activity and how it is today an indispensable format in the retail environment. So I'm going to join in with Linda, who is connecting from Canada, and we're going to start this beautiful conversation. Waiting just one little second to connect. Hi, good morning.
Can you hear me?
How are you, Linda?
Good, how are you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
I'm fine. Thank you for doing this and thank you for joining me today. Just going to wait one little second because I think there's a little technical problem with the connections. Linda, I'm going to be waiting. Don't worry. I think there's a connection problem somewhere. I'm going to join, to invite in Linda, and we'll kick off with the live. Linda, I sent the invitation again. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes there are little technical glitches and I don't. Yes. Yes, I can hear you well. Sometimes if you feel that there's a connection problem or delay, don't worry. I will repeat the questions or reconnect. So Linda, thank you for doing this and thank you for connecting. It's always a great opportunity to join people from across countries and continents to talk about subjects related to retail. And today's subject is a very exciting one, as we're going to be getting to know you and your line of work, and we're going to be talking about Popup Go in more details. Linda, can you hear me? Sorry, everyone. I don't know if we are disconnecting. I will connect again with Linda because I see that her image is freezing. So let me just go back and connect with Linda. And I think we should be good. Linda, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening.
I don't know either. So I'll answer your question. So Popup came out of a communications and marketing company called Zenergy, and we offer integrated communications and marketing services. And on many instances, people would ask us, "Can you help us find a location to do an activation or to do a brand activation?" So we thought, why don't we set up a website to help people connect with landlords and then support it with, sort of communications and marketing services. So that's where Popup Go came out of. It's about 3.5 years old. And we work throughout North America, not just in Canada, even though we're based in Toronto.
Okay. And so basically, the creation of Popup Go was out of a necessity, out of a business necessity.
Exactly.
I'm curious to ask about the services or the uniqueness of services that Popup Go provides and how they are different from other platforms who might be today also established on the market and proposing or delivering similar services like temporary leasing services.
I would say that what's really unique about Popup Go is that we work for locations. We work the equation, the retailer or the brand and the landlord, but then we also support it with our communications and marketing services and give them a 360 kind of service offering. So it's not just a location scouting, and it's not just a representation of brands. It's really helping with with pretty much A to Z, really from the beginning to end. Some clients don't want all of that, but some people do. And we could also help on both fronts. We could help the landlords with their marketing services as well to try to, and all with a focus on pop-ups. That's the entire focus, not on short-term leases, but really not only pop-ups in the, I guess, untraditional way. Like we don't want to go, we're not really focusing on the Halloween pop-ups, for example, or the Christmas markets. It's really about brand activations and sort of unique opportunities.
Okay, that's great. We're going to be talking about all of these details in a few. However, can we just go back to the idea related to the changes of the retail environment? Today, the environment is shifting, and there is a lot happening. And the pandemic surely accelerated all of these changes, whether it was from the customer side, whether it was from the brand side. So how did the retail environment contribute in the need for these new retail formats?
Well, I would say that, of course, with the pandemic, obviously people, flocked online, and, those who were not online developed an online presence. But we know that native online brands that didn't have a brick and mortar presence wanted to also have one. So interact. But what you could do is do other things. So what people were doing is creating environments where maybe they could use outdoor spaces to generate sort of traffic or generate brand existence. So maybe parking lots, maybe using mobile devices where, not mobile devices, but like mobile, like trucks or mobile units that maybe people wouldn't go into the actual physical store, but they would actually use it almost like a billboard and drive traffic to websites, so to their online presence. So really at the end of the day, utilizing other means to try to drive traffic to their website and planting the seeds so that when actually, you're capable of actually having a physical store, you've already started to plant those seeds with your target audiences and you're driving interest to your brand. So, you would, obviously things are different in Europe than they are in North progress and with with the pandemic and with the vaccination outreach. Are you having a hard time hearing me?
I changed my location. Maybe I'm bugging.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking the same thing too.
I don't know.
Here we go.
It's making me crazy. Okay, so Linda, most of the times, as you have mentioned it, there are lots of ways that brands are seeking to activate themselves, to animate, and to connect with consumers differently. Most of the times, pop-up stores were identified with vacant locations, vacant high street locations. I think we're having, sorry, Linda, I don't know if I'm cutting or not. I think so. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know. I seem to have a distant voice.
Well, you're in France after all. Is this better, or I'm gonna maybe go somewhere else? Maybe it's me.
I because I've changed locations. I changed a location as well. So let's try to see if this one is good.
Okay.
Okay. So, Linda, sorry about that. I was asking about like the vacant locations, vacant high street locations. Are pop-up stores only associated with vacant high street locations, or are you looking at alternative formats to meet with brand needs today?
Well, the reality is that any location can be used for a pop-up. So yes, of course, High Street has always been locations that are utilized for for pop-ups. You know, historically, when we look at where pop-ups actually really started, they were primarily traditional storefronts. But we're seeing the utilization of everything from windows as opposed to the internal part of the store used as storefront pop-ups that maybe with the pandemic and all that, people would actually use the windows to sell their product and create brand awareness, but not actually sell the product there, but use it as a way to showcase their products. Parking lots are another one. Of course, shopping centers, malls, are often utilized for pop-ups, and we're seeing the applications being very different now. We're seeing a lot more along the lines of food. So how do we actually promote food? How do we do pop-ups? We're seeing ghost kitchens, which, yes, we could say that those are not pop-ups, but they really are, in the sense that they're utilized on a temporary basis to service a need, and to change up and help chefs kind of stay relevant and so on. So we've got a number of things. We have mobile pop-ups that are like move across geographic areas to kind of create momentum. So it's not just a traditional storefront. And
Storefront.
I yeah, exactly.
And what does the high street need today? I mean, is the high street really in desperate need for a change of brand concept, or is it just a desperate need of the way we're presenting ourselves through retail formats? Because it's a bit controversial. Are we just like not wanting to go to buy our garments or food or whatever the way we used to? Is it just a matter of experience, or are there any other factors that you believe in your line of work are changing the retail scene?
Hmm. I would say that if you try to do a pop-up like a traditional store, you're not going to get much traction because, as you said, first of all, people have a pent-up demand. They're dying to get out and to experience something. They don't want the
Something, yeah.
traditional, I'm going to go and buy a t-shirt. It's more about the experience and the integrated approach to kind of creating an environment of fun. Everything you read today talks about the fact that people are looking to spend money on an experience, looking to spend money on fun. So there's this whole element of like artistic component as well, where you see it with all of these different art installations that are happening around the world, from the Van Goghs to all these different types of digital types of events. So it's taking the digital, it's taking the traditional, and it's taking the experiential and bringing it all together. So it's not really about, sometimes it's not even about a transaction. It's more about the experience and creating time sensitivity. So basically, you want to create something whereby you only are there for a short period of time because and you need to get there.
Mm.
So, and of course, influencers are playing big roles in all these different activations, integrating an influencer into the program. Chefs, being there for like potentially, meeting a chef or meeting a person, meeting an iconic person, those kinds of things. So it's not only about selling, it's about the brand experience.
Um, Okay, if we join like that new ideal in retail, like putting in a lot of experiences in this in setup, would mean that brands are going to put much more investments than they used to. Are they measuring their returns with this experience effect taken into consideration? Today, putting an extra effort to get in influencers or ongoing animations in our pop-up stores would increase our costs. However, how are they measuring their returns vis-a-vis all of this effort that is being put?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think that that's an excellent question because a lot of times people say, oh, I want to do a pop-up. And then you say, why do you want to do a pop-up? Like, what is your actual, what's your goal? So I think it's really about reverse engineering it. Why am I doing this? What is my ultimate goal? What does success look like? Is it capturing email? Is it connecting with X number of people? So I think it's really about defining the why behind the actual activation in order to determine, is that investment actually necessary? Because a lot of times what people are doing now is that they're actually taking their marketing dollars that they may have spent on advertising into this, because having a more personalized interaction and a much more focused interaction results in a far better results than doing something in a mass way. So it's more about defining that. So if your goal is to maybe meet up with X number of people and directly connect with them and create these brand ambassadors that you will then help spread your brand, maybe that's far more important than doing anything else. So I mean, that's kind of hard also to determine, because if you've never done one, you don't know if the investment is going to result in those but you need to define them. And at the end of the day, if you don't know what success looks like, then there's no point in doing it. Does that make sense?
Right. I right, yes. Because I'm curious to know about this, because customers seem to understand today the value of pop-up stores and seem to understand what they are looking for and what they should expect when they go visit a pop-up store. However, we are acquainting brand managers and retailers about this new application. And from your experience, I was curious to know if brand managers are always resistant or reluctant to adopting pop-up stores, as they don't know what to expect from them, and if management is still managing pop-up retail as they do with their traditional stores. I mean, this is a phenomenon that you should be seeing now more and more with your clients, right?
What's interesting about what you just said is the fact, have an openness and actually know that it's not taking what you normally would have done in an advertising or in a normal kind of setting to the spending that you would have had. It's not the same thing. You can't just translate it directly. It's got to be adjusted. And I also think that there are companies that have adopted these pop-ups. Companies like Lululemon, for example, which the world knows this brand, and it's actually a Canadian brand. And what they've done a great job at doing pop-ups in very different ways. Sometimes they're selling brand products. Sometimes they're showcasing experiential type events, and it's just a pop-up event where they're just kind of connecting with their consumer. So it's really about understanding, is it that you're trying to present the essence of your brand, or are you trying to sell product? So and I think brand managers are much more open than they used to be, and certainly landlords are much more open than they used to be. You know,
Yeah.
there's a win-win on both ends of the equation.
Right, right. This is the point that I wanted to attend with you. You working closely with landlords or property owners who are now more lenient and more open to the idea of leasing their spaces short term. So how is this phenomenon growing in Canada? Are there differences between Canada and other and I mean the US, if we can just compare country to country?
I would say that Canada was probably slower than the US in terms of pop-ups. We were, having said that, there have been progressive landlords over the years who, you know, actually designated specific areas for pop-ups. So only specifically designated areas for pop-up activations, which, you know, in Canada, there are a few that have done that. So I would say that term lease to pop-up leases. Of course, sometimes they're super short, and that's a difficulty because of sometimes pop-ups, they want to just pop up for a weekend. So obviously it depends on what the brand is and how much money we're talking about. But there's no doubt that there is an openness to work with brands and to be more lenient and to be much more involved in the process to ensure success. Because if they have a successful pop-up, then that location will obviously be seen by many customers and by, you know, and actually give it value, right? So if you have a lot of traction towards that specific location, or now there's a hesitancy to even sign a 5-year lease, you know, so there it's a working as a, I guess, more cooperative, in a more collaborative manner than it had been in the past. I would say that street locations have always been far more open, you know, storefronts have always been more open to pop-ups, but there again, you know, if you look at Toronto, very expensive to get downtown Toronto storefront locations. I have seen landlords be much more lenient than they were in the past, because about a year, even just before the pandemic, you know, trying to get any sort of any sort of, you know, reduction in any rate. In fact, when it was a pop-up, there was a surplus. You know, they were asking for
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
more money, right? Because it's a shorter period of time and it's such of a
Shorter
headache.
period, right.
So I don't know if that answered your question.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And we have seen a lot of concepts in Canada that are much local concepts, and that try to get together lots of startup brands into a sort of pop-up collective. And I believe that Quebec had worked a lot on these initiatives. Is it now a common practice to have like local authorities or communities develop like temporary pop-up stores to get together startup brands and to animate a little bit the downtown areas?
Yeah, I would say that what's interesting is what you're talking about is like what we call marketplaces, and it's a collaborative of different brands coming together. And some of the initiatives have been in Canada, anyways, and you know I've seen them a lot in the U.S. as well. But in Canada, a lot of them have been like driven by municipal governments or municipal or local people. So basically, to help local businesses you know, maintain stay afloat, and also get them going because we know that there's a whole drive towards supporting local businesses and you know buying local as opposed to buying from big brands and so on. So we see that a lot. And you know there are companies that have been actually very progressive where they actually had created environments where you know it's almost like a place and you could actually have different vendors come different times, and you know pop-up goes actually creating that kind of thing as well online. So we're actually over time in the next couple months we're going to have something called projects with an X, and it's basically going to be a hybrid supporting the marketplace online and giving them access to really finding locations in the brick and mortar environment. So kind of doing the hybrid, supporting the whole omni-channel approach to business, and so that you have all the different touch points dealt with.
Right. And is it difficult, Linda, for online brands to find themselves acquainting actually their practices into popping in a physical location? And how do you come in handy? How do you help a first time online retailer launch its first pop-up store, because they definitely do not have the expertise for that nor the know-how in the physical world, right? Do you help brands, online brands, do that?
Yeah, we call that make it pop. That's Popup's Ghost service called Make It Pop. And basically what we do is we do everything from helping them find the location, but also create the look and feel that will resemble their brand essence. Together, really the look and feel, and then obviously helping them from everything to getting them a payment processing system set up with, whether it's Square or whatever it may be, but getting them it is in the online world, and and maybe establishing where the location should be based on the demographics, and again, helping them understand why they're doing a pop-up. If they're doing a pop-up for a reason, what does success look like, and then helping them determine how long this pop-up should be. So really kind of going through almost like it's a mini business plan for the retail presence.
Right. And normally, what's the learning curve when you get to work with so many different brands? What's the learning curve? I mean, each brand has its own way, right? And they have their own story. So how do you help telling different brand stories at each time with pop-up stores?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I would say it's the same thing, because as I mentioned earlier, we're a communications and marketing company that does, that has Pop-Up Go as a division. And, so we're accustomed to working with different industries and understanding what the essence of the brand is, whether it is a consumer brand or not. So I think our team has really had great experience doing this. So for us, it's more about having the customer or the brand be very forthright with what they want, and share as much as they want, because really it's all about sharing and collaborating and working as a team, because really we work as an extension of the company. So we kind of take part of it and make sure that we understand their essence. And what's really important is that we actually we get them to give us a tremendous amount of information. What is their persona, what is, like, really understanding the brand and who they're trying to get to and who their target audience is. And that's really the critical element, in understanding really what, is the brand very much on the, about eco-friendly and sustainable, or is the brand more about, I don't know, whatever their essence is. We try to really drill down so that we know it's actually showcased with their pop-up.
Yeah. So that you find the best representation throughout their pop-up activities. Right.
Exactly.
So thank you, Linda. I hope I'm not cutting a lot and my connection is stable. I don't know if I'm cutting,
the internet.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Technology is today an integral part of our retail journey. How is the digital aspect integrating into the pop-up stores environment, or how is it becoming an integral part of pop-up store activities?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that all the technology that, is evolved in terms of like AI and the whole, there's no doubt it depends on how sophisticated the pop-up is, but you know, sort of like social media plays a role. Now, that's not a heavily involved technology, but that's what people look at today, right? So social media really drives the traffic and sort of interest to a pop-up. The I guess the payment processing, the whole fintech world, the whole online payments processing, and the payments in store. What can we get in terms of data collection? What can we get in terms of business intelligence from all the transactions that we do? So it's really setting up,
Yeah.
to kind of have from all the transactions and understand.
Sorry, guys, I think the connection freezed. I'll just wait a little second to reconnect again. I'll wait just for one little second, not to lose Linda. Sorry, guys, to keep you waiting. I'll invite again Linda. Linda, I'm sending again the invite. I'm sorry for that. I think, can you hear me
Hi.
now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I mean, we're
no
depending a
problem.
lot on the internet and it keeps failing us. Sorry, Linda. We were talking about the integration of technology within the retail store. So if you just want to continue, I'm sorry, I don't know where we cut exactly. However, we were talking about the importance of the digitalization and
I mean, I think that there's no doubt there's been an evolution in technology. Technology always evolves, right? And the elements I would say that technology provides is understanding clients and drilling down in terms of information about customers that come through the store. So utilizing technology to actually get that, because personalization is everything, right? So if you're able to kind of get much more information about each customer, I mean, there are many different things, right? You can have technology where you're not going to put anything too sophisticated in a pop-up, but there are elements that you could do, where you're actually understanding whether it's just the data that you're gathering when people come into the store will allow you to understand who your customers are. I mean, there's something very basic which I've seen recently too, is for COVID and all that, there's for a limited number of people in a store, people have got these different technological tools where you have a red and green light when and this is very basic,
yeah,
but there's
yeah,
where you
yeah.
can, I don't know if you've seen that. So if you see the red light, you can't go into the store. If you see the green light, you can go into the store. So something as simple as that, all the way to, of course, utilizing, and also like we talked about Windows earlier, but the reality is that you could have AI, sort of capabilities on your window, so that when
Interactive.
people, yeah, so you
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
understand, who these people are, the demographics, their age, their gender. I mean, there's a done. Most of the stuff that's done is really in permanent stores, but data gathering and data mining is really critical to to your pop-up, because it gives you the learnings that you're hoping to get as a result of doing the pop-up to begin with.
Right, right. So again, of course, this all depends on the brand's identity, its objectives, and certainly the costs that
that it has allocated for this project or this pop-up store. Can you talk a little bit about the nature of the costs of a pop-up store, and if we can compare it sometimes with a traditional store, how can brands understand the difference? And certainly the time cost factor as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, again, it's so broad, right? But let's say,
Yeah.
I don't know, let's say, uh, but Vuitton did a pop-up, outside of actually in Toronto, outside of the train station a few years ago. And I don't know how much money they spent, but I'm sure they spent a lot of money. They spent probably, I don't want to actually stipulate, I'd rather guesstimate, but they may have spent more money on that than they would have on, potentially, 1,000 square foot, renovation of or adaptation for a retail store. Have 1,000 square foot stores, but the bottom line is that really is so broad because it depends on the budget, the brand, the purpose, and so on. But I would say that a general pop-up store will have to think about, of course, how much their lease is going to cost, how much it's going to cost them to set up for the store itself, and of course fixturing and so on. A lot of times pop-ups are done with fairly basic fixturing, but you don't want a pop-up to be super basic, otherwise it's going to look too temporary and it won't be attractive. So there's like a fine line between that, right? I would say the biggest savings between a pop-up and a permanent store really is somewhat
the lease.
Exactly, the lease, because you have to pay insurance for you have to pay damage insurance, you have to pay a deposit, you have to pay damage insurance, don't have is a long-term lease. So I would say it's really the commitment to the lease. And if you're really using some marketing dollars that are actually going into this pop-up, you may spend more money than you would normally spend on a pop-up because you really want it to be robust, So it's a very tough question to answer, but I would say, to your point, it's really the lease. The rest is, pretty much the same. Very basic. And if you go basic, maybe that's the essence of your brand, being very kind of sparse and,
Right. So, I mean, the main message that we should extract here is we should not have this misconception or this vulgar idea that, pop-up stores are cheap or they are easy to make or they are not expensive at all, because everything is really relative to the project, to the brand, and to all the factors that come in the pop-up formula, right?
Exactly. And I think to that point, the word pop-up or the term pop-up, I think is often misused. Some people say, oh, I went to, a Halloween pop-up, or I went to, a pop-up where they were selling, merchandise that was from last year, like, and clearance, for example. A true pop-up is really an activation. It's really like a marketing play, right? It's not, let's get rid of merchandise or, so I think that we need to make sure that people, because a lot of people, say, oh, well, pop-ups have been around for a long time. Well, they have been, but not in the role that they play today. Although, in Europe, they've been around.
Yes, there is always a thin line.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, with many intensities in different cities around, but the use is different, and customers also in some areas seem to be less acquainted than others in other areas, which is also shocking sometimes, because you would say that if a pop-up is present in that country, then everyone would know it. But but you would learn and you would understand that concentrations of pop-up stores would happen in very specific areas, and people around them would only be acquainted to that. And it's sometimes it's shocking. I don't know
Yeah,
how
but I
to
think that,
explain it.
yeah, no, but to your point though, I think pre-COVID, pop-ups were always in, heavily, in
Yeah,
populated areas.
visited areas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but now you're seeing pop-ups in secondary markets where, because people are not moving around as much, or people want to support local. So there's a very interesting kind of change in the marketplace, and I think we're going to see that a lot more, where it's not just because people have actually moved out of the areas anyways. People have moved out of major concentrated areas to move to secondary markets. So interesting as it may be, you may not always be in the most populated areas, right? It's about who you're trying to attract, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's a bright future for pop-up retailing or this temporary market. And it's a beautiful thing because it's going to also revive maybe some, as we said, secondary markets who have been jeopardized by the main or the center at some point during the past decade or two.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, in your opinion, what would be your advice to those brands or brand managers who still did not adopt pop-up stores?
Well, I think that the ones that have not adopted it is perhaps they didn't consider um, what the role of an activation is, because really a pop-up is about experiential, an experiential activation, right? So I would say consider in your marketing budget thinking about, okay, well, you do maybe events, maybe you attend trade shows, or you do different things where you're trying to get in front of a consumer, but maybe take some of those dollars and put it towards an activation that'll be maybe more targeted, more narrow, but much more effective, because all of a sudden now you're the center of attention. You're not part of a group, you're not part of you're not part of other people, you're not competing with anybody else. You're really, yourself out there. But again, it has to fit into your brand, your plans, what your goals are, and what you're attempting to do with your brand. But I would say give it a try. I mean, take a percentage of your budget, maybe like whatever, let's say it's 10%, and maybe think about doing different markets. A lot of times people do
Yeah,
pop-ups, across a certain geographic area. I've seen people go across major markets, take a look at those and maybe see, can you reinforce your brand in those specific markets, and then build on, an already existing following, and then utilize that to then maybe afterwards go to secondary markets where you want to be, and build on that. So I think it's really a matter of
yeah,
deciding. We know that personalization, we know that people want, they want to get close to the brands. We know that direct to consumer is, where it's at, right? I mean, the middleman is being cut out a lot of times. So why not leverage that and see how it can work for you?
yeah. Like utilizing pop-up stores to experience and experiment, whether on a market level, whether on a concept level, and to divest really through these pop-ups, which is not a bad idea after all, because it wouldn't be a negative thing if it didn't work out. But however, if it's positive, it's a good piece of information on which the brand could build its future strategies and applications. And Linda,
Exactly.
just to like put all of these ideas together, if we're talking now in a omni-channel context, how about the inclusion of pop-up retail in this omni-channel concept within a brand and within the new processes of managing the brand?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that goes to where we were talking about earlier, which is really having all the elements kind of feed into one another. You've got your online
Yeah,
feeding into your social media, and then bringing you to sort of a physical environment, right? So and then utilizing influencers. So really all the different touch points, kind of converging and providing the same sort of messaging. So the actual pop-up really serves as another form of communications. It's not really intended to be, a standalone. So
distribution
really,
channel.
Yeah, so it's an integrated approach to to branding, right? So if you've got your website serving customers and so on, give a personalized approach to it by having, or give it an in-person approach to it by having this pop-up. And again, it has to be a very short period of time. It's got to be a purposeful time. That people are coming to your pop for a specific thematic activation where you're maybe launching a product, and it's one of the elements of your as you said, your omni-channel approach, because really you're doing it online, you're launching it through social, and then you have a physical presence to then execute it further and to give it more of a touch and feel of a personalized, or rather a physical component to it. So it's really having all those elements together. And I think that's what, if somebody's actually launching a new product, or they want to test a new product, they could do it so easily that way, right? They can have that pop-up that serves the brand intelligence knowledge, that you're getting information from all elements, or all touch points.
Right. It's really interesting to think of it that way, and really important to think of pop-up stores that way, like integrating them as part of the entire brand touch points, and letting it really do a connection between online and offline, and the transition to help create that beautiful customer experience and customer journey.
Exactly. Yeah. And to your point, it's
Linda,
really that customer.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know. I hear you perfectly well.
Okay.
You can't hear me? Yeah.
Yes, Linda. You can go on. I'm sorry I cut you.
No, it's fine. But you're right. I think that you touched it right on the head on the, like basically it is a customer journey, and following the customer through the different touch points is really crucial. I think if there's a disconnect, then that's where, you've missed the mark, right? So it's really utilizing the store as another touch point. So if you're on the website and you're in the store, it feels the same way, but it's servicing you in a different way, right? And of course, when you're in the store, you could have a component that's obviously online too, right? I mean, you talked about technology before. I mean, I've seen so many pop-ups where they've used the store to then bridge it back to the website or to the online essence, so whether it's digital screens and so on in the store, or maybe even, if you're in the pop-up and you love something, but you actually, maybe you're just looking at it in the store, or you're experiencing, but you're actually buying it online in the store, so there's so many different components that you can integrate into a pop-up, and, to give it an experience that actually touches on all the elements. And, again, bringing in the element of, maybe testing a product, so that you actually, have people part of the decision making. I've seen people do pop-ups where, people are actually part of the naming of a new product, or, creating a new product by being, doing some sort of experiential thing in the store, depending on what the brand is. And there's, in terms
Again,
of
sorry, again, here, I'd just like to focus on the importance of the customer and the customer centricity of pop-up stores, and letting them really not only just participate for the sake of being like data collecting elements, rather than inputting valuable information that will help the brand, make the brand better for customers. And this is key in the conception of pop-up stores, as you were explaining.
Absolutely. And that's kind of part of what we were saying in terms of, defining what's your ultimate goal. Is your ultimate goal really to sell product, or is it to actually have them, your customers, those who you're targeting, really tell you, what exactly you should be doing? Of course, within, reason. You don't everybody dictating to you what you're doing, but maybe you have
Yeah, yeah,
consensus that, the scent of this, I don't know, cream that you're launching, is really off. I mean, none of your target audience really likes this one better. I've seen people, do pop-ups where they actually have consumers kind of mix different brand scents together and kind of create their own name to the brand itself or to the product, so, and then maybe adopt one of them as being like, the next product that they're going to showcase. So it's really having the customers,
yeah,
as you
yeah,
say, experience your product, but also drive the future of the product, right? Because they, at the end
yeah,
of the
yeah.
day, they're the ones that are buying it, right? Yeah.
Right. That's really, really important. As as much as we think that it's trivial or like simple information, come to think about it, most brands fail to deliver what we're saying, and sometimes are content with doing pop-up stores that have no essence and that do not consider like engaging with the customer. And when he visits, when he cannot immerse in the pop-up store, he would go out and feel that it was tasteless. And this would only tell us that we have failed in creating a pop-up store. I think
Exactly.
so. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Oh
think
my
that,
God.
when we see also, like, in terms of trends now, since, where are like, who's doing pop-ups? And, what we're seeing is pop-ups that are done in categories where people are spending money. Of people bought dogs. I mean, there are so many people with pets today. I don't know what the percentage growth is, but it's pretty high. So a lot more people have dogs post-pandemic or now than they did pre-pandemic, right? So you're seeing a lot of, like,
Right.
pet accessories doing pop-ups, and sort of, so why does that matter? Well, then all of a sudden you have interactivity with these pop-ups, right? You have, dog friendly pop-ups, and now you integrate the pop-ups into people's lives because their lives are very pet centric, and you've got people, congregating them in groups developing. So it becomes like a community. It becomes a, going, like, integrating into your lifestyle. And
Right. Right. Right, right. And this is really, really important that we highlight it. And I'm glad that we are tackling these points, as it has become really an integral part of how brands are putting forward these events or these activations that just make sense. And we feel that the pop-up store comes in as a natural extension of what we were thinking, or of what we hope to see as an extension of our relationship with X or Y brand, which is really important for brands to be really at the lookout of what customers want and how they want to portray themselves right here, right now, through these pop-up stores. Wow.
exactly. It's a big chunk.
Exactly. Linda, I think we have like tackled important information today, and I believe that we made like the round related to today's pop-up stores, their importance, and their activation. Is there anything else that you would like to add and that we didn't talk about?
I think maybe the element of being realistic. I think what happens a lot of times is people say, "Oh, I want to do a pop-up store," and they want to plan it a year in advance, or they want to plan it tomorrow. So at the end of the day, there's a balance. If you want to try to do something a year down the road, it's not that easy, because of course landlords don't want to commit to a short-term tenancy, for a short pop-up a year in advance. Having said that, on the flip side, you know, to have a pop-up and properly set it up, you need time. So maybe you need to think about, let's say, planning 3 months ahead of time, so that you're ready to launch, but you and the landlord is willing to kind of commit. So, and then you have enough time to actually get. And I did touch on that. I want to reiterate is knowing the why behind your pop-up, because if you don't know the why, then you don't know if it's going to actually end up being successful. And it's not only about selling product, it really goes beyond that, because if you just want to sell product, stay online. It's not going to change much. But if you want to create an experience and get close to the customer, a pop-up is really where to go.
Right. Thank you, Linda. I think it's really important to say things like as they are, because managers have to, as you said, be realistic, whether when they want to plan the pop-up or whether they want to actually go on and do the pop-up. And this timing is really important, not only for the landlord, but for the brand and the customer, because I think like planning a pop-up a year ahead would change the entire retail setup, and customers also wants and desires in terms of what they wish to acquire from the visit to the pop-up. And many things could happen throughout this year. And thank you for pointing it out, because that's a really important point that managers should take into consideration. So Linda, if we want to get in touch with you, how can we do that? If we want to do like our next pop-up store?